I am Jen Frazier, CEO and founder of Firefly Partners, and we're here with UnTangled episode number, I don't even know where we are, 7, something like that. Lucky number 7. Real talk for nonprofit teams tackling tech, outreach, and strategy. So many things to talk about in that wide-ranging area of tech struggles and nonprofits. I've been doing this crazy work since about 2008. Seems like I'm sure some of you are like, I was in middle school. That's cool. We're glad you're here and we're glad you're doing the work that you're doing. We need you. We need your energy. We need your enthusiasm and passion right now in the world more than anything. So I've created a little space here every week, talk to different folks in the nonprofit tech space to help us untangle some of the thorny issues we wrangle with around the ever-changing landscape of technology and all the things we handle on a weekly basis, day to day, hourly, moment by moment. And today I'm joined by the most fabulous and wonderful Emily Goodstein. Hello, Emily. Thank you for joining us. Principal of Greater Good Strategies. Emily and I have known each other for about 100 years. We both worked at Planned Parenthood Federation back in the very early 2000s. And look at us now. Here we are, all grown up. Little babies all grown up. So I'm so excited. Emily's doing the same type of work that we do at Firefly, slightly, different flavors, but is in the mess behind the mission every day, handling all the crazy, helping great organizations do great work. So Emily, jump in, tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got to where you are today, and sort of maybe your favorite passion project that you're working on.
I love that. Well, first of all, I'm so excited to be here. I love this live podcast.
I know, right?
How fun is that? Also, I just want to say I was cool for about 10 minutes in the middle of middle school. So just thinking through, I think that it's important to lift that up. Well, I got my start, obviously, when I was an intern at Planned Parenthood Federation of America in 2002. That's really what put me on this path to success. But seriously, actually, so many of the great people that I met during that internship are still colleagues and friends. Some of them have become clients, obviously mentors and colleagues. So that was a quite important and impactful part of my trajectory. I started at Greater Good actually as an outgrowth of my independent consulting work. So I had left a full-time contracting. I remember my parents saying, if it doesn't go well, there's always space on our couch for you to sleep.
I love it.
I really believe in I remember that same year I saw you, Jen, at a conference, and you said, you just have to trust the process. It's going to be great. And it is. It has been great. In fact, great.
It's been great.
So our agency now, I started with 4 consultants on the team. Now we have 65 folks on the team. We have an executive team of 4 people who are the best ever humans. I love working with them every day. That's really the whole reason that the agency does any good work, is because of the folks that are on the team. And I feel also extremely lucky that, especially now, I get to work with organizations that fully support, that are making the world a better place. Yesterday, I got to have a call with a group of people helping folks who were part of the criminal justice system, who were trying to get back on their feet, showing up for themselves. And then I had a call to talk about graphic design for a report about teaching STEM in middle schools. So, it keeps me on my toes, and it's a nice variety.
Yeah, it's all over the place. I love that about this work too. It's never a dull moment. Let's just say never a dull moment. You range, the gamut all over the place. Like the organization's missions, the size, the complexities of the things that they're dealing with. But there's a through line. We're going to talk about that today, which our topic is why your tech problems are usually people problems. And this is like, I started specifically, even my days at Planned Parenthood when we overlapped, I was doing a lot of the technology, a lot of the digital organizing and dealing with tools behind the mission, trying to help us all be more successful in the digital spaces to move our missions forward. And you spend a lot of time like wrangling with, Marina and I were talking a couple weeks ago about it. It's like you're in there and you're like fighting with your technology, you're trying to make it work, just so you can sort of make that connection, with your supporters. Like, why sometimes you're like, why does that be so hard? I'm just trying to like let people know about our mission. And that simple little act sometimes becomes like all consuming. You have to be like, okay, hold on, what's actually getting in our way? Why is the technology sometimes being my friend, but sometimes a lot of times being a little bit of my pain and not my friend. But often when you start digging, I'm like, oh, people want to blame the tools a lot. Oh, it's this platform just did this thing better or this thing better or whatever. And there's a lot of like, let's just throw the tool out and let's start over. And that somehow is going to fix our problems. And I think, spoiler alert, I actually no. So when we came up with this topic, what was sort of circulating for you, Emily, and how do we come to this, or what maybe some of your bigger things that you've come up when you think, yeah, it's technology problems, we've all been there, all been sort of struggling with it. Tell me about the people behind the tech and sort of what's happening
Yeah.
there.
So I feel I get to sit kind of in an interesting spot, right? Similar to you, Jen. I hear from a lot of nonprofits that what the challenges are, right? So they often call us when something's not going well. That could be we're having trouble reaching this population, or we don't know how to unlock this thing that we feel like should be successful for us, or we have a funder who really wants us to move in this direction, or whatever it is. But usually people call us because they're looking for some solution. And often if I ask a few more questions and dig a little deeper, sometimes it's an issue of culture, it's an issue of staffing, training, the relationship between human beings. I mean, I think so much of this also is we're often not in the same place at the same time, and things get lost in Slack messages and emails and texts. And really, if we dig a little deeper, it might be a question of, maybe that tool's not perfect, but I think actually that set of tools could get you a little further if we stopped and talked about, well, what's kind of like the flow of information, or does it really take 3 different people to handle that one thing to get that process to work? Or, I know that the person in this department feels really territorial over those names. And then those names over here can like never be mixed with those names. But is that moving the mission?
Right. Is it? And also, another spoiler, half the people that you think are only on your list actually also on the other list. So when everybody is like, no, 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 you can't touch my people, you're like, okay, two major takeaways that I always want to come up with. It's first of all, that person doesn't understand that they're on sort of quote your little list with inside the organization and blah blah. They care about the mission of the organization. Number one, they're like, and which is why leads to the second thing. They're on quote multiple lists inside what people get very exactly what you said, territorial. These are my people. I get to safeguard what they hear. They're only listening to my messaging. You can't get here. Like, I own this relationship. And you're like, that's a whole human being over there on that list. They're not just a name and an email and a dollar sign. They exist in multiple dimensions within your organization. And they've probably come to an event and they've probably donated over here. And maybe they've volunteered and maybe they've taken an action. They've sent a letter to their elected official, all these things and more. So they do appear within sort of different, silos differently in that organization. And you need to treat them and understand. First of all, you need to understand where they exist across your organization. So you shouldn't be so territorial necessarily, and understand the life experience of that person on your list and where they show up. And you should communicate and talk to them like you understand that they show up in multiple places for you as an organization. And that will actually make that relationship that much stronger when they understand that all the ways in which they interact with the organization. Let's go back again. The tools can't fix that, but they only can fix it if the people are motivated to get there and make the tools work for that, to that end. Otherwise, you do stay in those sort of like siloed areas. You're communicating, maybe like you just said, Emily, they come with these problems. You're like, let's unpack why you're stalling out with your mid-level donors or whatever is happening there. Let's understand, how are they being communicated with? What are the messages that are happening? How might they else be being communicated with? Maybe you don't even understand. So they're sitting there as a confused supporter of your organization being like, I'm getting these 3 different messages with all these different tones, different asks. It's all very confusing. And it's hard for them to make sense of it.
And they're not also decoding each message thinking, oh, this comes from the field department, and then this is from development. Your people on your list see a message from your organization and they see your logo, and that's probably as much as they're digesting. So I hear about that a lot. Obviously, no tech product is perfect. Some of them do certain things better than others, but I often feel like folks are really quick to think, well, we just have to rip out that tool and put in another one, and it's going to be really expensive and it's going to take a long time, but it's going to fix the problem. And the part that I worry about is that it's not going to fix the problem. And some of the tools that we have available to us can do remarkable things. When we were at PPFA, half of the things that happen now weren't even visible. That there are some tried and true best practices that I still see organizations not doing for various reasons. And I sometimes also worry that it's sort of a training issue or kind of like a cultural issue. It's about this tool isn't going to do what we want it to do, but more maybe we're not using it to its fullest potential, or we didn't give someone the time and money they needed to get up to speed on a particular platform so they can feel really confident using it and making suggestions about how to make best use of it.
I think that's a big one is like when I was, this resonates a lot with the Maureen conversation about the training and the, again, just sort of understanding and the rules of the road, and like looking at the processes, like we're talking, like how hard is it within your organization to actually just craft an email and get it out to them? It's surprising how hard that is inside most organizations. I mean, not even like many. I would be like most. It becomes this like 25-person stop, and content gets rewritten, and you're like, oh dear God, like trying to be responsive to an action is a laborious project. So I always kind of want to stop with like, let's look at the workflows. Let's look at the people who's touching a process. Like you said, does it really take 3 people to look at this one thing? Is there a way we can help streamline? To your point, we are big proponents that it's probably not the tech. I mean, again, there's basic tools and there's more sophisticated tools, and there definitely are steps along the way. So I don't want to say you can do everything you ever wanted with any platform. You can't. But I think a lot of times also I watch people buy really complicated technology. It's complicated, hard to use, and you struggle just to get the basic stuff done, even in that complicated tool. Maybe that's a point in time where I would actually recommend somebody sort of like come down a notch.
Well, sometimes people say, what's the new hot thing we should know about in the case? And my answer always is, the new hot things are the old tried and true things. We're not doing any of the tried and true things. So we're not actually going to launch you on Snapchat. We're actually going to take a minute and talk about, I noticed that a lot of your website is not mobile friendly. Let's talk about that first. Or you haven't updated the social channels you have. Or there's not a consistent message or tone. So it's fun to think about, oh, we need a new platform, or it's fun to think, oh, the technology, whatever, is having a problem and we need a whole new platform. But at the end of the day, I am a huge proponent of let's actually go back to the boring things because they work. And maybe the fun new things are actually effective because they're built on the foundation.
And then back to the component of that is it's the people, again, behind the tools. Like we talked about last week with Sade, it's the relationship building also that can't, tech's never going to take the place of that. Like we were talking about in our pre-show show on Chatter was about the relationships or those in-person moments that actually solidify like a donor, a relationship with the organization sometimes, where that's like technology has nothing to do with any of that. And that's going to become that moment that you have where you really personally connect with somebody out in an event. That's going to be the thing that like keeps that person committed to the organization and puts you in their, will or whatever. These are the things like technology over here. Not that again, you don't need to try and stay, current and do the, the latest things a little bit, but the tried and true and back to making sure you're still weaving in a lot of the personal connections, which is why people are involved with nonprofits in the first place.
Wait, because you mentioned plan giving, I just have to flag this. I've seen so many organizations recently only targeting plan giving ask to people who skew significantly older. And I keep saying, I had a child 5 years ago. We just made our will 2 years ago. That's when we had to make the decisions about people that were going to be plan giving targets. That's when we think about where we want to leave a gift after we pass away. Not when I'm, not in 40 years from now. So you flagged it, and it's something that's been bothering me, and I'm glad I have this platform to talk about it. I wish that people would really incorporate more. Why can't we also talk about plan giving there? Let's just people know that you have a plan giving program. The other thing I was going to say was I polled our team before this conversation, and one point that I really love, my colleague Barbara said, tech doesn't create chaos; it just surfaces chaos that was already there.
Not yet.
The problem isn't the technology; it's maybe more the way people that are using the technology.
I couldn't agree more, and that's part of where, the new tool is a bit of a distraction. I think you're going to take the dysfunction that you currently have and move it into a new platform if you don't address the underlying people, processes, dysfunction that's happening there before. What's really causing the problem? Can I identify things that we're just not doing effectively in a platform now? And to your point, what's happening just with our workflows and the people that are on the teams that is already chaotic? And that's what's the problem. It's not a tool, but because it's related to, this campaign or this, end of year or whatever it is, we sort of, the tool gets wrapped up in that as like, oh, that's the problem. And again, we could fix certain things, and there's always ways to optimize the platform. I think I've never ever met a client that is using their platform like that, they've dialed it all the way through. Like they're using all the bells and whistles and all that, they got it, and they're like rocking and rolling on all of it. None of you. I don't care how big of an organization you are. Honestly, sometimes even the bigger ones are more chaotic. Because there's even more teams
and more layers, and there's more. The stakes are sometimes higher. The list is bigger. The approvals process is longer. I see that often. The organizations that have the household names are the ones where we often think, oh, they're doing everything perfectly. But when we look under the hood, it's sort of like, oh, did that actually need that fourth approval? And it seems like these processes not working. And this person over here has never actually met this person that's going to be building that email. Maybe talk to each other and just like,
I saw, again, one of my favorite panels, I think it was at last year's NTC, was actually the people at Planned Parenthood who had the doers, not like the directors or VPs of any of these departments. Like all the doers just finally were like, we're just going to get together and make a little working group because we don't have shared terminology across the organization. We're all in the tools in our own little ways and our own little islands. Let's start building some bridges around here and sort of say, how are you using the tool? How are you using the tool? And they just took the initiative themselves, which I think is a great takeaway to say, sometimes if you're like trying to get VPs or whatever level to sort of pay attention to what's going on sort of in the ranks, they're doing all their things that they need to be doing, and they don't sometimes have the capacity. It's a little bit, sometimes you have to just do the thing, maybe, ask for permission later, whatever. But because you know that it's going to help the organization as a whole, and honestly, just you in your day-to-day doing your job is going to be better, more streamlined, more efficient if you're able to communicate on the same language, even a shared language and understanding of how other folks who are sort of in the tool are using it was like an aha moment. And then they've created this ad hoc group that just has grown and thrived. And like, it's been like their little savior of like, oh, good. Now we have created all these great sort of rules of the road, and they've created a little bit of their own sort of governance and usage. And you don't have to wait for leadership to do it for you or like get permission, or be like, we need
that sort of difference of who's sort of making the decisions versus who's in the tool is one of the reasons that these problems exist. Because the folks sort of who are thinking like really broadly don't understand, that actually takes an additional 3 hours to send out a segmented email because of the fact that those systems don't talk to each other or whatever the example is. And okay, 3 hours for one person one day doesn't sound like a deal breaker, but every day,
time suck and across multiple people or something. You're like, oh, like watch the time, and it's like, oh, you don't understand making that decision, the impact that has on the ground.
I also I'm occasionally frustrated when an organization will make a really big technology decision that requires buy-in at all levels, but then folks at a senior level won't actually be the hands-on keyboard folks as well.
Right.
All the tools take care of feeding. So if you are a person who's going to be entering data once ever or every single hour of every day, you still all need to have the training. You still all need to have some working knowledge. No one's too good for access.
Love it. No one's too big or above and beyond the understanding. Maybe you're not in there, like you said, maybe you're not in there every single day, but you need to understand kind of the implications of the change or the requests that you're making of the folks in the tools doing the work. Sort of great article, but it was talking about an active versus passive sort of leadership style in big technology decisions, and about how important it is to have an active sort of sponsor, executive sponsor of a project like this and have them really involved in it, not just sort of like check it, great, really check in, and they're not really actually bought in. They sort of gave it a pass and sort of, yeah, you should do that. But again, not understanding the implications of what maybe a move to a new tool is going to actually, the impact, my Lord, on the team, productivity hit, like all these other things. It's like, this is not just a dollar sign of how much does it cost to,
like,
the new tool. Imagine picking up and moving every single piece of paper you have in your office and having to move it to another office. The time and the money involved in that, and the productivity hit for the rest of your team while you're getting resettled in a whole new office building. It's the same. I mean, it's very disruptive. And that, I think, sometimes is not fully baked in, where you're like, if you just invested in some trainings and some more cross-team collaboration opportunities around the tools that you already have, you might see that the technology problems, like you said, they might disappear. They might not be as gigantic and as much of an obstacle.
Not saying that they don't exist. That all platforms have pros and cons, but I do think that some of the cons can be alleviated when we look at the people and the systems and the culture first.
Totally. Okay. So I think we've gotten that. Hopefully people understand. We've got main themes there. Love all those insights. Definitely you've been there. We've both been there around the block. We've been around the blocks a lot of times. I love your insights always, from another, agency person who's interacted with multiple organizations of all sizes around these types of issues. So thank you so much for joining me. I want to give you a minute to either do like a key takeaway, one take home, or tell us about where we can find you and your team and what we might want to see you guys in the wild, as we call it.
I love that. Okay, well, to answer your second question first, why not sign on the internet at greatergoodstrategy.com. You can also find me on LinkedIn and Instagram, Emily Goodstein, 2 O's, no L. People often make that mistake. I still actually am using Facebook, and it's great. So I would love for people to find me there too. I'm Facebook. I think I'm probably one of the last Facebook users. Also speaking at this event for the DC Metro and 10 on September 10th, I'm going to be talking about something similar, and it's a really good panel with some people who are extremely smart, and I'm excited about that conversation to learn and hear what everyone else has to say. And then the other thing I would just flag, it looks like we got a question from Ted. Ted, how fun. The main point I was going to make actually is that all of these things, the technology work, the fundraising work, the organizing work, it's less actually about the tools and it's more about the relationships. And to celebrate the fact that Jen, you and I met in 2001, and our relationship has held on so strong until now. And Ted was one of my clients. Ted, I don't even remember, like 15 years ago. And sure, the technology has helped us keep in touch, but at the burn and all these organizations thriving.
Yeah, totally. I don't know if we can address or totally answer Ted's question, but yes, we'll just do this really quickly. When one team falls in love with the tool inside the organization and tries to jam it down everybody else's throat, this can be our quick, like, solve it on the fly. If it's a powerful department like IT, how do we handle that? Emily, thoughts?
Time and patience. I actually,
Yeah.
in Ted's question, he said, how do you slow down the train? And I think that that's actually the biggest kicker is the tool eventually will be great. And if IT loves it, there's probably good reasons why. But can we just get a little bit more time to either make the decision or train people or a few more resources to make sure we know where to go to ask questions as we all kind of facilitate this really big transition to something new?
Agreed. I think that really understanding why that one department is so in love with a tool, and maybe other departments, as maybe we've seen this before, other departments using other tools that they're also madly in love with. I think at that point, it is important to do a kind of cross organization, across departments needs assessment of like what it is that you're actually trying to do, and then really figure out, let's take a neutral look, hopefully, at the different platforms that are already in use by the organization and truly try hard not to let one team, steamroll a platform if it doesn't really meet the needs of the whole organization. And again, not every tool is going to meet every team's every wish and desire, but try to get and land on one that meets the majority of the needs across. And I get when it's one powerful department, this is when you need to get other department heads involved with a more of that active, leadership in this decision making to help you slow it down. Let's do an evaluation. Let's not rush into one tool to rule them all if it doesn't actually sort of fit the needs across the organization. And I know that's easier said than done. So I appreciate where you're sitting and I understand why this is difficult. But if you need additional help or resources or, whatever to talk some people down off the ledge or talk to other leadership people about how to create more of a cross-departmental working group to evaluate and move and adopt a platform that's going to meet the needs more holistically. You know where to find us. Emily Goodstein, Greater Good Strategy, Jen Frazier, Firefly Partners. Let's help solve these problems together. That's what we're here for. We're here to help. We want to make sure all of you all thrive and continue to kick some booty out there in a very, very difficult time. Again, thank you so much for joining me today, Emily. Next week, another episode of UnTangled, same time, noon Eastern, here on LinkedIn Live. I'm going to be joined by Kathy Renna, amazing, love, communications director for the National LGBTQ Task Force, longtime client, longtime friend, talking about how to do advocacy in a leading LGBTQ organization in these terrifying times. Every day, I want to support and cheer the work of all the people on the front lines doing this work every single day in a very terrifying environment. So I'm excited to have that conversation and hear some of the, stories from the front lines and also just hopefully some tips of how to help other organizations continue to stay bold and stay strong to your mission when you're right in the crosshairs of, I'm going to just say the evil empire. I'm just going to say it because it is. So stay tuned. Look, tune in next week, same time for that conversation. And Emily, we'll wrap this up. Thank you so much for your time and your expertise.
Thanks for having me, Jen, and for all you do to help these wonderful progressive causes thrive.
Thank you. All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.